All right, welcome back into Studio 10, and we have an award-winning poet joining us, the Nandi Comer. How are you, Nandi?
I am well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining Studio 10. So first, I have to tell you, congratulations from all of us here at Studio 10 because you just became Michigan's Poet Laureate, the first one since the 1950s. But how did that feel when you found that out?
Oh man, it's been a wonderful ride. I remember when when they first decided to approve the funding, and as a poet, I was just excited. I didn't know that I would be the one that's going to be able to fulfill this position, so it's been a really great time just like learning about it and being really excited about the plans for the program.
That's awesome, and that's what I wanted to ask you about, were those plans. So your role really requires you to work heavily with the Department of Education and with the students of our state. So what are you planning to do with this platform, and how do you want to help students develop their voice?
Well, so it's a 2-year appointment, and so the first year I am concentrating on going to see some of the kids at schools all over the state. I'll also be visiting the larger community and the library system as well. I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's just the kids. No, I'm going to get a chance to work with adults too.
Okay.
And during the first year, I'll be doing some research around my project, and then the next year, I'll also continue to do those visits, but I'll be launching my Poet Laureate project for the year as well.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about that project, or is it under wraps?
It's still under wraps. I don't want to promise the state anything just yet. So, but you know, I'm definitely excited about some of the ideas that I have. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this is just one of the several awards. If we had all day, trust me, guys, I would list through and go through every single one of them. But how did you get started writing in poetry?
Well, I've always kind of kept a journal. I used to write my prayers down when I was a kid as well, but I didn't really start to like learn about what poetry was until I was in high school, and I had a high school teacher, Dr. Terry Blackhawk, introduce poetry into her English class. And then I went to a summer program where I was allowed, under the stewardship under a poet, Vivi Francis, who she really changed my life and made me really rethink what poetry could be. So around like 9th, 10th grade, ever since then, I've been writing poems.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of those poems have to deal with Detroit, where you were brought up and you were raised. Can you tell us how Detroit has influenced your work and influenced you as well?
I mean, you know, I write about a lot of things. I even write about things that aren't Detroit related, but I always say Detroit is somewhere in there. So sometimes the river shows up in my poems because the Detroit River is very important to me. Just the cadence of the way that we speak in Detroit. I can't speak about things without having Detroit just a little bit in the spirit of my lines. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. And I'm so excited because you're actually going to be reading one of your poems for us today.
It's a Detroit poem too. So,
okay. I was going to say, tell us a little bit more about it.
So this poem was written right at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. We were all isolated and we were all swapping stories over the phone. And my friend Adela told me about her neighborhood and her street and how they were coping with that isolation. And I just started to develop it in my head, like, what did that look like? Because I had never been to Adela's street. And so it's really full of images around what I imagined that street was like during this time of isolation.
That's awesome. And I'm so excited because